It's a great pleasure and honor for me to provide these opening remarks to, I think, which is a very important topic. I'm really looking forward to the discussion that we're going to have on how services can actually drive and help drive the recovery to from the pandemic. I mean, it's very clear that the pandemic was a huge shock to the world economy. It's also very clear that that shock was very asymmetrically distributed. And in part that I would argue depends on kind of the state of services and the ability to utilize services to kind of keep economic activity going. So I think this was a unique, hopefully a unique event. We're certainly not looking forward to a repetition anytime soon. But it constituted a mix of supply and demand shocks. And the demand shock, I think, was particularly salient for particular types of services, right? Travel, tourism, business services, anything that requires mobility was severely affected by the lockdowns that were put in place by governments in response to the pandemic. And I think there's quite a bit of research now, and maybe that will also be discussed in the course of the day, that illustrates how the impact was very differentiated across different types of sectors. Clearly, countries that were heavily dependent on tourism as a source of foreign exchange were affected very dramatically by the lockdowns. But I think the COVID episode also illustrates the resilience of a lot of these services sectors and the ability to use information, communications, technology type tools, to use the internet to adjust to this changing situation. We have many examples, and I don't have any time to go into the details, but we can think about education, we can think about telehealth, we can think about the delivery of food to households. We can think about the role that was played by logistics in particular. Think about international maritime transport. Think about the platforms like Amazon e-commerce, all of which is heavily services intensive, right? So I think services were hit hard, but I think services also were part of the reason why we've managed to come through this crisis, I guess, in better shape than otherwise would have been the case in a world where we didn't have all this information technology, where we didn't have the type of services, industries, and firms that we have today. I think in terms of lessons to draw from the pandemic and the response to the pandemic, I think it illustrates the importance of keeping markets open, of having a predictable policy environment. I think looking forward, I would expect services to be a major kind of factor in driving the recovery as mobility becomes easier, as people can begin to start traveling again. But I think the response to the supply shocks in areas like logistics in particular, illustrate the importance of actually supporting internet connectivity, supporting the ability of services firms to actually allow us to both produce and consume the goods and also services that are important for households. So I think looking forward, there's a real big need to foster deeper engagement, international cooperation on services policies, and in particular to support the ability again for services to flow across borders. And that of course is associated with the free flow of data, which I'm sure will come up in the discussions yesterday and will continue to come up in the discussions today. Thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.